I am 77 years old, and I am about to tell you something that might shake you. 8 years ago, at the age of 69, I walked away from my husband after 52 years of marriage. And it was the most terrifying and liberating thing I have ever done in my life.
I can already hear what you're thinking. 69 years old. Sister must have lost her mind. Why would anyone leave after over half a century? She must be going through something. Must be chasing some foolish dream. Must be running from responsibility. Maybe that is how it looks from where you are sitting. But from where I was standing, I was finally finding myself again. And if you are sitting there right now in a marriage that feels more like a prison than a partnership, telling yourself you're too old or that you have come too far to turn back now, I need you to listen to what I am about to say. Because I spent decades trapped by those same thoughts. But before I tell you about the day I left, let me tell you about all the days I stayed. Because that is the story nobody wants to hear. Everybody wants to know what finally pushed you out the door. Nobody asks about the weight that kept you inside all those years. I got married in 1971. I was 22 years old. We were living in Atlanta, Georgia, and I thought I was building something solid. His name was Marcus. He was handsome, ambitious, came from a good family. My mother loved him. My father said I was making a smart choice. The church celebrated us. I wore my best dress and believed we were forever. The trouble did not come crashing in. It came creeping. There was no cheating, no shouting matches, nothing you could point to and call clearly wrong. But there was something missing that I did not even have words for back then. Respect. Not the kind you give someone because you are supposed to. The kind that comes from truly valuing who they are. Marcus had ideas about what a wife should be, and I spent 52 years trying to fit that shape. A black woman in America already carries expectations everywhere I go. At work, I had to smile wider and speak softer to be taken seriously. In public, I had to watch my tone, my body language, my every move. I accepted that. That was survival. But I never expected to feel that same weight in my own home. Every decision had to meet his approval. How I dressed, where I went, who I spent time with, how I spent my own money that I earned as a nurse. When I wanted to attend my college reunion with my girlfriends, he made it clear that was disrespectful. When I suggested we take a weekend to visit my sister upstate instead of always going to his parents' house, he reminded me whose family was more important, whose opinions mattered, whose plans took priority. I remember about 10 years into the marriage, I told him I wanted to pursue my nursing degree and become a supervisor at the hospital. I'd been working on the floor for years, and I had the grades and the ambition for it. Not just a promotion, but a chance to lead, to use my mind, to build something of my own. He shut it down immediately. "We do not need the money that badly," he said. "Your place is at home with the children. Why would you complicate things?" He made me feel foolish for wanting more, made me feel like ambition was dangerous in a woman. So I put the idea away, kept working the same shift, kept my head down. And every year that dream got smaller until I could not see it anymore. He was not cruel. I want to be clear about that. He did not raise his voice or put his hands on me. But there are other ways to make someone disappear. Little comments about my opinions, sighing when I spoke, talking over me at family gatherings, correcting me in front of our children, dismissing my feelings as being too emotional. It was death by 1,000 small moments of not mattering. Then we had kids, 2 daughters, and suddenly staying felt like duty. I am doing this for them, I told myself. They need their mother and father in the house. I knew too many black girls growing up with fractured families, and I was determined not to be another statistic. So I stayed. I worked. I cooked. I cleaned. I raised our children mostly alone while Marcus worked long hours and then spent his free time with his friends. I showed up to every school event, every dance recital, every parent-teacher conference. But I was only half there. The other half of me was somewhere far away trying to remember what it felt like to be whole. Marcus and I became actors in our own life. We went to church every Sunday, sat in the same pew, held hands during prayer. We hosted family dinners and holidays. From the outside, we looked like the model couple, strong, stable, still together after all these years. But inside that house, we were strangers. We could go days barely speaking beyond logistics. Did you pay the light bill? What time is your appointment? Your mother called. That was our marriage. We shared a bed but lived separate lives within it. I remember our 40th anniversary. Our daughters threw us a party. People gave speeches about lasting love and commitment, about how rare it is to see a black couple stay together that long, to build something that lasts. I smiled, and I hugged my husband. I thanked everyone. And when we got home that night, I sat on the back porch alone and wept because I realized I'd spent 4 decades performing a marriage instead of living one. The years kept moving. The girls grew up, went to college, started families of their own, and my reason for staying walked out the door with them. But by then, I had convinced myself it was too late. I was 60, then 63, then 67. We had built a life together. We had grandchildren who called us together. We had friends who knew us as a unit. How do you unravel nearly 52 years? How do you tell your grown daughters that the foundation they stood on was shaking the whole time? And practically speaking, how does a black woman approaching 70 start over? We had built equity together, retirement accounts with both our names. He had worked long hours to provide. I could not just walk away, could I? So I stayed year after year, telling myself it was too late, too complicated, too selfish, until the morning I could not get out of bed. I was 68. It started as fatigue, then shortness of breath, then the doctor visit I'd been putting off. The diagnosis came back clear and devastating at the same time. Not a heart condition, but severe depression and anxiety. My body was shutting down from the weight of a life I could no longer carry. The doctor, a young black woman, looked at me with eyes that somehow saw everything. "Ms. Wilson," she said, "you're not dying, but you're not living either, and your body knows the difference." She prescribed medication, suggested therapy, but what she really gave me was permission to tell the truth. I was not sick, and I was suffocating. I started seeing a therapist, a sister about my age. First few sessions, I could barely speak. Decades of holding everything in had sealed my throat shut. I sat in that office looking at the floor, my hands folded in my lap like a schoolgirl. What does a woman my age even say? Where do you start when the story goes back almost 52 years? But slowly, I started talking about the marriage, about feeling invisible in my own home, about dreams I had buried so deep I had almost forgotten they existed. about the woman I used to be before I became what everyone needed me to be. The woman who sang, who danced, who believed she could do anything. We talked about my mother, too, how she had stayed in her own unhappy marriage until the day she died, how I watched her shrink year after year, how I swore I would never become her, and then I spent decades becoming exactly her. My therapist asked me a question that changed everything. If you found out you had 1 year left to live, would you spend it the way you're spending it now? The answer came immediately. No, absolutely not. Then why are you spending it that way now? She asked. You do not have a guarantee of tomorrow. None of us do. So why are you living like your real life is waiting somewhere in the future? I had no answer because there was no good answer, and that is when I knew. At 69 years old, sitting in a therapy office on a Tuesday afternoon, I made a decision. I did not know how long I had left. Maybe 10 years, maybe 20 if I was blessed. But I refused to spend whatever time remained disappearing a little more each day. 3 months later, I told Marcus I wanted a divorce. He did not cry. He did not yell. He stared at me like I had spoken a foreign language. After 52 years, he said, after everything we built. We did not build anything, I said quietly. We stayed. There's a difference. The divorce took over a year. It was painful, expensive, complicated. Some family members stopped speaking to me, called me selfish, called me foolish. My older daughter did not understand. You're throwing away the family, she said. What about us? What about the grandkids? As if my staying in misery somehow protected them. But my younger daughter, she surprised me. She called me one night, and I could hear something different in her voice. Mom, she said, I've never heard you sound this alive, and it made me realize I've never really known you, and I've only known the version of you that existed for everyone else. That conversation changed our relationship. We started talking more deeply, not just about everyday things, but about life, about fear, about what it means to be a black woman trying to live honestly in a world that does not always make space for that. Telling my daughters about my unhappiness was harder than the divorce itself. They were in their 40s by then. They had families, and they were shocked. But you and Dad always seemed solid, one of them said. That nearly broke me because I realized I'd been such a good actress that even my own children believed the performance was real. Some friends from church pulled away. At our age, divorce is still scandalous in some circles. People whispered, people judged. But I also found unexpected support. Other women my age who pulled me aside and said quietly, I understand. Women who looked at me with something like envy. Women who were still living the life I had just walked away from. At 70, I moved into my own place, a small one-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood I had never lived in before. First time in my entire life I had lived alone. I was scared. Some nights I woke up wondering if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. Some days the silence felt too heavy. I had to learn how to make decisions without asking permission, how to sit with my own thoughts without distraction, how to be comfortable in solitude. But I didn't fall apart. Slowly, I started finding myself again, the woman who loved to read, who liked to paint, who had opinions and dreams and desires that mattered. I joined a book club, started painting again, something I had given up when Marcus said it was a waste of time. Started going to art gallery openings and museum exhibits. I made new friends, not couples we knew from church or work. Real friends, people who knew me as Gloria, not as Marcus's wife or the girl's mother, just me. I even started a small quilting business, something I had always wanted to do. Not the grand operation I had imagined at 30, but a modest venture creating custom quilts for families, telling their stories in fabric and thread. A place where women could gather, share, and create together, where we debated life and art and possibility, where everyone knew my name and my story and nobody judged me for it. That business became my sanctuary, proof that it was not too late to build something of my own. I am 77 now. My life is not what anyone would call impressive by material standards. My apartment is modest. My income is small. Some days I am lonely, but I am free. And that freedom, that permission to be myself, is worth everything I gave up to find it. Here's what I know now that I wish I had known then. The regret is not in leaving. The regret is in not leaving sooner. Every year I stayed was a year I stole from myself, and I will never get those years back. If you are reading this and you are quietly dying inside a marriage that looks fine from the outside, I need you to hear this clearly. You're not too old. It is not too late. You have not invested too much time. That is the lie that keeps you trapped. The life you're hungry for is waiting for you to claim it. But you have to be brave enough to walk toward it. You have to be brave enough to disappoint people, to be misunderstood, to be judged. You have to be brave enough to choose yourself. I spent 52 years being what everyone needed me to be. A good wife, a good mother, a good provider. And I was those things. But I forgot to be a whole woman. I forgot that my life was mine to live. If this story has touched something in you, let me ask you one thing. What is the one thing you have been afraid to admit even to yourself? What is the truth you keep pushing down because it feels too dangerous to face? You do not have to share it with anyone else, but you need to stop hiding it from yourself because that hidden truth is a seed. And if you give it light, it might just grow into the life you were always meant to live. Write it down. Say it out loud when no one is listening. Whisper it to yourself in the mirror. Just stop pretending it is not there. That is where freedom begins. In the moment you stop lying to yourself about what you really need, it is never too late to start living. I am proof of that.